Hello and welcome all to our last Womeesa seminar of 2022. I'm Lorna Strachan and I'm hosting today's session on behalf of the Womeesa Committee. As Womeesa is an international organisation, we wish to acknowledge Maori as tangata whenua and Te Tiriti Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We also acknowledge the traditional custodians of country and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Indigenous peoples were the first Australian and New Zealand earth and environmental scientists, and we've a lot to learn from their deep knowledge that spans tens of thousands of years. The Womeesa seminar series is about showcasing the amazing work of women in earth and environmental science in Australasia. All the recordings of past seminars are available on our website and YouTube channel. You can sign up as a member of Womeesa to get notifications of upcoming seminars, or you can follow us on Twitter for now. I'm delighted to introduce our November speaker, Associate Professor Kathryn Amos. Kathryn is the current head of school for the Australian School of Petroleum and Energy Resources at the University of Adelaide. She was previously Associate Dean, Student Experience, for the Faculty of Engineering, Computer and Mathematical Sciences. In July 2020, she won the South Australian Chamber of Mines and Energy Exceptional Woman in Resources Award. Her research is in clastic sedimentology. She obtained her PhD from the University of East Anglia in the UK, and her first sedimentologic loves were, interestingly, the opposites: turbidity currents and dry land fluvial sedimentology. She has since enjoyed investigating sediment deposition in a range of environments, taking a range of approaches, including experimental sedimentology and looking at both modern and ancient outcrops, and sharing this knowledge with students. So today, Kathryn is going to be focusing a bit more on her career journey so far. And so now it's my great pleasure to hand you over to Kathryn.
Thank you, Lorna. I will share my screen with you all. So here we go. All right, I think that should be working. Yes, thank you, Sarah, for the thumbs up. So thank you, Lorna, for the introduction. I shan't repeat too much of that right now. This is a really different sort of a seminar presentation for me. I have never quite given one like this before, and I do really value the opportunity and the platform that Womeesa provide for all of us in the community to hear from other people, maybe sometimes share war stories, but also successes and tips and tricks. And I'm hoping that some of the things I say today may be useful to some of you. I have some photos to introduce myself, because you had a very smart version of me in the Womeesa advert for the seminar today, and sometimes I do that, but not all the time. And I guess the reason I'm showing these pictures is partly I think something that will come through in what I'm going to say, but perhaps not enough. So I want to say it really clearly at the beginning, is that, my approach to my career is that I approach it as a whole person. We talk a lot about balance, and I'm not sure balance is the right way to think about things, but it's having a kind of my perspective is having that holistic view of my life, my career, my personal life, and that ebbs and flows in different directions at different times, but making sure I'm keeping track on that whole overview. So sometimes I like to dress up and be smart in business meetings, and sometimes I'm the opposite and I'm out in the field. And I'll show you how I guess my career evolution has progressed and changed. So those photos over on the right hand side really represent a former version of myself. I don't get to go out in the field so much anymore, but it's certainly where a big chunk of my heart still lies. And I have the great privilege and luck to be the mum of a 7-year-old at the moment. So we have lots of fun together as well. So I've got a timeline here. I guess this is the kind of personal history bit, and I'm putting this up front because two reasons. One, it gives context for everything else I'm going to talk about. But also, I think I'm hoping that by the end of this slide, I'm going to show you that there are really different ways of interpreting track records and career evolution, and you don't always tell the full story. Sometimes it depends who you're talking to. So I'm starting this in the beginning of 2004 when I got my PhD from the University of East Anglia in Norwich in the UK. I had a few postdoc positions after that, so I've had a pretty kind of straightforward and fortunate academic career. Back in 2004, Lorna and I shared a broom cupboard office at the University of Leeds for a while. And then I came to Australia for 2 years. And that was at the beginning of 2005. So I had a position in Canberra at the UNSW College there, and then came to Adelaide for a postdoc. They were all at academic level A. So I haven't labelled my axes, which is very bad science of me, but the y-axis here is kind of academic level. So it's probably different in different places. I know that the New Zealand system is very different in some ways to the Australian one, but we have kind of towards the top of level A is where most people would start a research position after finishing a PhD. Level B then equates to kind of researcher or lecturer. C is senior lecturer. D is associate professor, and then level E is full professor, which I haven't included because I am not there. So I did manage, I guess the first thing here is I managed to move from level A to level B on a contract renewal at the beginning of 2009, which happened because I asked for it. And I seem to remember I asked for it quite a lot before it happened. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gone out and said that was what I wanted. I was then appointed into a lectureship position. That was a competitive appointment process, but it was in the same department that I had been working as a postdoctoral researcher for a few years at the time. So this is all kind of here at the University of Adelaide, where I have stayed since 2007. That position was made continuing in 2012. And then I was promoted. I can't see the star, but I'm assuming it's there. I was promoted to level C, a senior lecturer, at the beginning of 2015. And it was in the first half of 2014 that I submitted the promotion application for that. I was really pleased about the timing, because one of the things that I had always hoped for was that I would manage to succeed in being promoted to senior lecturer before going on parental leave, and I, by the skin of my teeth, managed it. So I took most of 2015 off on parental leave, and then if we fast forward to I'm just going to minimize pictures because they're covering my screen. So it was the beginning of this year that I was then appointed into an associate professor position. So in this talk, I'm going to cover two things, as promised in the title. One is some thoughts on leadership, and the other on academic promotions. So I've put now at the lower part of this slide when I took on some key leadership roles. Now, some of those were just kind of internal kind of administration responsibilities within the school, and others were more formal appointments. So back to 2010, when I was just at the beginning of my lectureship part of my career, I took on the role of being a learning and teaching representative for the school. Not long after that, I became a programme coordinator, so had oversight of an honours and a master's degree programmes. And I managed to get myself invited onto various faculty committees through in the years that followed. I didn't really have any more substantial responsibilities until 2016. So I was the school's postgraduate coordinator from 2016. And then in 2018, I applied for and was appointed into a faculty role. So I think they used to be called Associate Dean. It was really a director position, I think is a more common term, and that was reporting up to the Deputy Dean Learning and Teaching for the faculty. So I was a member of the education team for the whole faculty, and I really enjoyed doing that a lot. And then the opportunity to apply for the head of school position came up during 2019, and I was appointed into that, and that position began at the beginning of 2020. Now I knew that I was going to be in for a challenge. Our student numbers have dropped substantially. Our school's budget was not in a particularly happy place. And there were some clear things that I knew I could do to turn things around. Not the big student number issues, but more around kind of workplace culture. And there were some things I really wanted to have the chance to work on. So I put myself forward for that position and took it on. Little did I know COVID was just around the corner. So the last 3 years have been pretty hectic, to say the least, but they've been an amazing experience. So looking at it this way, it looks like a fairly linear, straightforward career progression, but that's not been my daily lived experience of it. So I'm just going to move those things up to the top and put some more information on the screen here. And I've got a few dot points. They're going to relate to these blue time periods. So the first one here is a 4-year of kind of full-time work equivalent period over a 4-year calendar period. Then there was this 5-year block, and then the last 6 years. And the reason I've picked those is simply because they match up. This 5-year period and then this more recent period match up to my promotion application timelines. So I have the data for them. But if we go back to the period 2005 to 2009, I was really active doing a lot of field work. I did 19 weeks of field work in that 4-year period. The next 5-year period from 2009 to 2014, I did 10 remote area field trips in all sorts of places, far North Australia, Central Australia. I went to Colombia, to Spain, lots of really exciting, amazing field opportunities to do some geoscience, and was away doing those for 17 weeks. I traveled to 9 international conferences. I presented 21 abstract presentations as lead author, gave a couple of keynotes. Now, at the end of that period is when I then went on parental leave. And in the period of time since then, things have been really different. I've done 2 research field trips, totaling a grand total of 2 weeks of time in the field. And on one of those, I took my 2-year-old with me and put her into a local childcare during the day so I could go and do some field work at that time. And I've been to 1 conference, and that was in Melbourne, and I took my baby with me. And another kind of data point I thought would be useful to include is that when I was on maternity leave and kind of returning to work part-time, I had 6 PhD students and, a really kind of active and growing, really exciting, awesome team of people I was working with doing some really interesting research. And in the last couple of years, I have had 2, which is down to 1 now, and I'm hoping she'll be finished fairly soon. So it may be that in the first part of next year, I don't have any PhD students. So there's been a really big shift in how I've worked, and the shift happened before I really strategically decided to take on more leadership roles. So when I came back from parental leave, I had just thought I'd be able to kind of crack back on with things. I was planning to go to a big international conference in 2016, and that didn't happen because I had a baby that didn't sleep and was attached to me a lot of the time, and I didn't really want to go without her, and I really could see that it would be very difficult if I took her with me. So I made really conscious choices to not travel, but then I had to kind of figure out what an alternative career path for this period of my life would look like. And so I guess I really focused on those leadership opportunities and the roles that would be more focused on contributing to the university and changing my focus in that way. So just going to move on my screen because I keep moving the Zoom bar and putting it in the wrong place. So one of the reflections, I've tried to do some reflecting whilst I was putting this together, and it's something that I've heard a number of times, and it's one of those things that hindsight is a wonderful thing. But often you may perceive something as a failure, but then different opportunities and career directions can evolve from that. So I think for all of us, we may have an initially relatively narrow view of what we want to achieve, but when circumstances crop up, we can create opportunities and find other things that are just as fulfilling, if not more so. I've actually been in a women's leadership course for a couple of days this week, and something that was thought-provoking for me was this quote here, that if you're doing something you're passionate about, success will follow. For some reasons I'll go into later, I'm not sure I agree with that one, really due to different opportunities that some people have and others don't. But I do think that we can define success for ourselves. And so that's another thing I thought I would say fairly upfront in this presentation, is that I have always, ever since when I was a PhD student and I could see how the senior academics in the department were working and overworking, and the choices that they had made and continued to make. And I decided at that time that wasn't for me. And I've made a lot of effort in the intervening years to really have some clear boundaries around how much I was willing to work, what I want to work on, and to really be internally happy with my own definition of success as that's evolved. So this is where Sandra McLaren's academic privilege bingo comes into play, because it would be completely wrong of me to talk about any aspects of my career, achievements that I have made without talking about academic privilege. And so the highlighted entries on this bingo card are the things that apply to me, and you can see there are quite a lot of them. I come from a really privileged place. I had parents who cared about me, who had been to university, who supported me in going to university. I grew up speaking English. I currently am able to work full time. All these different aspects of my experience are ones that I know not everybody has. And I think acknowledging the privilege we have, even if sometimes it doesn't feel like it, many of us do have substantial privilege, and it's because of that we've had opportunities that are not there for everybody. And so I also want to acknowledge country now, and I thought I would do it now because the career background I've had is relevant, and so something I want to say here is how important I think it is that we do acknowledge that we are, or I expect the majority of us watching this now, are living and working on lands of First Nations peoples, and often that's land that was stolen from them. And that when I came to live here in Australia, I had absolutely no idea. And I worked with various teams of people in several different institutions who didn't really pay any attention to that. And it took me a long time to learn that I was not doing my research and my fieldwork in a way that was really respectful or ethical. So I have gone and enjoyed the landscapes and the geology and the rivers and the landscapes in many different parts of this amazing continent without engaging with the First Nations peoples who are the custodians of that land, and for whom that land is incredibly significant. So I do want to take the time to acknowledge that, and that I greatly respect that. And to say that if this is something you're not familiar with doing, I don't have all the answers, but I am really happy to have conversations about some thoughts I have and things that different people are doing to really work in partnership with traditional custodians of the land that we work on better. So when I first started working here, we would get permission from the cattle station owners to go and have access to land to collect samples. And now things take a lot longer, but I and my team, an amazing team of people I work with, we reach out, we introduce ourselves, we ask for permission, and a big part of that is then being prepared to not do the work if we're not given permission. And that has happened. There are places that other teams of people are going and working because legally there's nothing to stop them from doing so. But ethically, we've chosen to respect the wishes of those first peoples, and in some places that means not collecting rock samples, which means that the work that we had hoped to do is no longer possible. So this is something that's now really important to me, and I think in a leadership position, I'm hoping that I can help support other people to help us all to do better and to do the kind of the Western science that many of us do in a more respectful and engaging way. All right, I've talked for ages and I'm only just starting on the main body of the talk. So the title of that was some reflections on academic leadership and promotion. So I'm going to talk about leadership first and then go through some of my experiences and maybe some advice that I wish I could listen to, and a younger version of myself could listen to after that. And first off is a definition of leadership, because I think we often, particularly I think in universities, which are very hierarchical, we think that being a leader is all about a role or a title, and I very strongly believe that not to be the case. Leadership is about who you are as a person, how you work with other people, how you have impacted things. So it's all about making changes and improvements, how the work that you have done has contributed to making things better. And that could be very research focused, it could be teaching focused, it could be to do with people and systems. It does require a lot of confidence, sometimes a lot of courage, often resilience. But I think through all of this, I hope one of those key messages, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it is often, I think, useful to just take the time to really reflect on it, that this is integral to who you are as a person. So don't try to be somebody else. Don't try and lead in a way that you see other people leading. I think the most beautiful things and the biggest impacts can happen if we give ourselves space and back ourselves to lead in a way that's authentic to who we are individually. And so one of the things, a conversation I often have with people who are at earlier career stages is, well, how can I demonstrate leadership? I've not had any appointments, I've not been given responsibility. It's not my fault that I've not been able to demonstrate leadership. So I thought I'd share a few items from one of my earlier promotion applications that I see as being evidence of leadership before I was really given any appointments that enabled me to do so. And they're pretty simple things, but things that have a demonstrated impact. So, I took the initiative to develop a writing workshop for our honours students in the school, because I could see that they really would benefit from getting that. It can be related to taking initiative with collaborations in any aspect of the work that you do. I did things like set up and coordinate a learning and teaching discussion group in the school that a number of staff would come to. And as a result of that, and my enthusiasm for improving, the pedagogical methods we were applying in courses, I helped colleagues uplift their own practice. So kind of influencing other people is a form of leadership that doesn't really require any job title or approval from somebody more senior to do. I created resources profiling women in engineering that were used for outreach to high schools. before, nowadays there's a lot more information available, which is wonderful, but back then there really wasn't anything, and most of the photos on all of the university web pages were pictures of men in engineering. So I identified a need, and I just got the job done and made something that we used. And I did, I was fortunate that I was given opportunity to participate in committees and working groups. But I did chase that. I went and showed the leaders that I was enthusiastic and wanted to contribute, and eventually I was given a seat at some of those tables. All right, so I promised the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm going to start with the good. And I would imagine we can all sit here thinking of all the many ways that our systems could be improved, the way that, that exciting opportunities to change the way we teach, and all of the research gaps that sit out there waiting for somebody to come along and do things differently. So I think there's just unlimited opportunity to make a difference, and that's leadership. And I mentioned before, leaders should look different, and it's important to be you. And in academia, there are lots of different types of academic. Now, we don't always see those in senior leadership, but I think things are changing. And the opportunities that are out there really do span all of the different strengths. And I think one of the wonderful things about academia is you can carve your own path. If you push and you put a business case together, you can see, a different way of doing things, then it's possible to do that, to create, better options for yourself, but then also, hopefully reducing the work that those who follow will need to do. So there's a few examples here of things that I did. I felt like I had a real battle on my hands with HR when it came to my maternity leave arrangements. I couldn't for the life of me understand why it would be so complicated, because I wasn't suggesting anything that would cost the university anything, and it was, benefiting me, it was benefiting students and my colleagues, and eventually, with a lot of paperwork, we managed to get there. But it meant that I was able to craft the kind of, I guess, the work-life balance that I really wanted in that first year after my daughter was born. So I think it took 3 months of full-time leave. And then after that, I came back to work 1 day a week. And that was specifically and in writing only for the supervision of my PhD students, so that I could continue to work with them. I didn't come into the office unless I wanted to. It didn't have to be on a specific day of the week. And I wasn't turning up to staff meetings, and I wasn't checking my work emails. In fact, I think I had an auto reply saying that they would all be deleted when I came back to work more than 1 day a week. I've managed to do some research travel with my 2-year-old at the time in tow, and again, the university systems didn't want to allow that. The policy had been identified as being problematic. I think it was written to stop male professors taking their wives to a conference in Hawaii with them, but managed to get that changed, and that was with the support of some brilliant senior men in the faculty who had identified that as an issue and supported me in being able to do what I wanted. So there's lots of different ways we can do things differently, and the flexible work arrangements one I've put in there is, I've not worked under a female head of school. When I was appointed into the head of school role, I was then the only female head of school in the whole faculty. And I made a conscious choice that when I leave work early or arrive late because I'm doing school drop off and pick up, I put it in my calendar, and I've been very open about that. I don't think people doubt that I'm doing my job, and I'm putting the hours in, and I'm just being flexible about making that work-life arrangement work in all of those different areas. And I'm not saying everybody should be completely open and transparent about these things, but for me, it's been an important part of showing colleagues that it is possible to talk about these things, and it's possible for a workplace to be flexible and support anybody, no matter their gender, in being able to be present for people that they have caring responsibility for. And the final dot point there that I thought I would throw out there, maybe is something you could all come back to later and think about. For me, working with a lot of male engineers in particular over the last few years, simply the act of wearing really colourful clothes feels quite a radical thing to do sometimes. And it's a conscious decision to do that and bring that aspect of who I am into the workplace when I'm in the mood for it. So, maybe simply the act of being feminine in a masculine world can be quite a radical act sometimes. I don't want to downplay how challenging these things can be. And if you don't feel psychologically safe in your workplace, then of course, there's lots of reasons people don't feel able to bring different aspects of themselves to work. But I have made a point of doing so these last few years and continue to do so. And I guess the obvious good things is getting to work with some great people and having a lot of excellent, fun and rewarding experiences. So a few reflections on experiencing the good that are things that I often reflect on. One is knowing the difference between that feeling that something's scary and you should run away as fast as you possibly can versus something that's scary but kind of exciting at the same time. And it's really about kind of trusting your gut instincts, I think, on these. But if you don't focus on it, you might not be able to tell the difference between runaway scary and exciting scary. And the difference is huge. And often those big opportunities can be scary exciting. And you might have to do a bit of self-talk and, bashing yourself about the head a bit to get the confidence up to go for it. But I think when you do those things is when you can really reap some big rewards as well. So that connects to living outside your comfort zone. I think that's something that perhaps I didn't used to do so much, but I feel like I'm living outside my comfort zone most of the time at the moment, but I'm really enjoying doing so. And the third reflection here is, and you have to be careful, I'm going to talk later about people who don't think you're capable and they're plain wrong. But there are others who see potential in you. When you doubt it yourself. And I've certainly benefited from that when the head of school position was available. I had a couple of senior leaders come and have conversations with me and tap me on the shoulder and encourage me to apply. And my first reaction was to run away. I was intimidated and didn't think that the time was right for me to take that on. But they wouldn't have done that if they didn't believe in me, and so I went for it. So I think being able to embrace other people's enthusiasm for your abilities is a really important thing too. All right, so on to some bad advice and assumptions. One classic, which was when I was level B lecturer and about to go on maternity leave. In 3 separate conversations on completely separate days in separate places by my head of school, by the deputy dean and the executive dean at the time, all told me that I would publish more whilst I was on maternity leave. And I had absolutely no intention of even trying to do that. And I don't even think I really responded because I was shocked by those comments. But some of these things happen, and I'm glad that I was confident enough in myself that I didn't even consider taking that seriously. Some other really bad advice that I have received was a conversation I was having with somebody who was a head of school that I was paired with in a mentoring program quite a number of years ago now, and it was our first and only meeting. And I was explaining to her that I had made the conscious choice that I didn't want to routinely work on evenings and weekends. And that's something that I had chosen to do as a PhD student and continue to aim for, with obvious exceptions. I was definitely working fairly late last night putting this presentation together. And I was halfway through telling her this, and said I didn't work evenings. And she finished my sentence for me by saying, well, you must work on weekends. So again, I had the confidence to back myself, and I didn't have any more follow-up mentoring meetings with her. All right, so for the ugly, I don't think I want to dwell on these too much, because we do, there's a lot of resources and information out there. I expect everybody who's listening is aware of these, but it is important to mention that, there is ugly in this, in our communities and our systems. There's a lack of equity in support and opportunity provision. Not everybody has the same opportunities or support. It results in limited diversity in people in the room, and the style and experience of leaders and the decisions that they make across the sector. And partly as a result of that, there are still too few voices in the room raising a need to focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. There are people in the room who raise those, but it's always the same people. And I think my reflection here is something that I consciously do, is that stepping up into positions of leadership is tied into that for me. I recognize, I wish I had more, female leadership role models, and I hope that by stepping up into those roles, that there are more and more, women leaders and role models for the generations to follow. But also not being afraid to speak out. So I often am the broken record in the room, bringing things up that many colleagues, it doesn't occur to them to do so. I think, we talk a lot in many universities and businesses nowadays about values and behaviours, frameworks and cultural change. And I think that these are still very much aspirational. They're not embedded in day-to-day life in a way that I do think and I do see happens in some corporations. But I'm an optimist, and I do see change happening. It's happening slowly, but I think it is happening. And leadership can be lonely. It can be very lonely at times, particularly when you need to have challenging conversations and make tough decisions. So finding your people, whether that's somebody in a similar role elsewhere, or a friend who knows nothing about university but is going to be your cheer squad, then it's really important to have those people in your corner. All right, I'm going to shift on to academic promotions now. And very quickly, I guess I showed before, so I've successfully applied for promotion from B to C and then C to D. In my head of school role, I've supported a few colleagues in their submission of promotion applications, had many conversations about this, and I've participated in quite a few promotions committees at the university in a wide range of different STEM disciplines. So the good in the academic promotions process, and I really fervently believe this now, although it's something I hated for a long time, is that there really is the opportunity to speak your truth. So the thing that I hated for a long time and resented was the effort and work involved in writing the promotion pack, the documents where you have to craft your narrative. But it's taken a while. I'm now a really big fan of that, because it's an opportunity to make it personal, to tell your story, to explain why your career trajectory looks the way it does and what your impact has been. It doesn't have to look the same as somebody else's. In fact, it's not likely to. So I've put an example there from my more recent application from C to D, and I had a short narrative statement which was explaining that my research focus shifted considerably, driven by changing personal circumstances, as well as some changing focus in the sector. So, that I shifted from field-based remote area studies to more locally accessible outcrops, and then on leadership. So I included a pretty honest narrative in my statement to explain why my profile over that reporting period looked the way that it did. I'm also going to credit Sandra McLaren again, because Sandra shared her promotion application with me, and in it was a brilliant sentence which I copied with her permission to include in mine, and I have copied at the top here, which is, of course we need to talk about publication metrics, but we also know that they're flawed. So, they need to be included. That context is important. But I included this statement that was really taken from Sandra's own application, saying that they've been included for use with caution, to acknowledge significant issues, particularly for minority groups, parents and carers, and those with career interruptions. Because I think we can never remind people evaluating things with metrics in about those aspects of it. I also, this middle point, I thought I would show that as another example of how, I don't know how personal I was in my application. So this is relating to a paper that was published by Sarah Moron and I, from work she did in her PhD, published in 2018. I know I'm biased. I think it's a really awesome paper. It's great. It has so far only been cited twice, and those citations were this year. And I honestly can only think that it's been cited so few times because it's written by two women who aren't big names in the field. Now, obviously, I didn't say that in my promotion application, but I did point out that it, the paper's there. It's not been cited. It's in a good journal. And I included a quote from one of the peer reviewers who said that they thought it was, a great study that should be well cited. So, I guess I'm hoping to give everyone permission to think outside the box in these applications and to really tell their truth in a way that is going to help the reviewers understand what they're reading. And the final comment I've got here is that in a 12-page submission, which is what Adelaide University's promotion from kind of A to B to C to D is, I used half of a page around creating an inclusive and respectful environment, because that's something that has been really important to me, that I think is important, and I know that university leadership value also. Now, these are things that I expect the majority of people's applications don't include, but they were important for me to do. All right, so onto the bad advice. My focus here is that when I was at level B, and I really genuinely thought that I was promotable, and I did for a few years, I was told, you're not even close. There's no way. I've sat on those committees. You're not going to be promoted. And I believed it. It didn't occur to me not to believe it. I finally decided to apply. And within the space of a month, the feedback I received went from, no, you're not promotable at all, to, oh, I think you've got a 50-50 chance, through to, the written submission in the end was that my contributions in teaching and leadership were easily level C, which was what I was applying for, if not a level higher than that. I was successful, and I got feedback from the executive dean at the end, because I was keen to know what they had thought about the application, and he basically said everything was great. I was above the line. There were no tough discussions about my application in the committee meeting. So if I was able to talk to my former self, I think the things I could have done and I wish I had done started with me. I think I could have better promoted myself and my impact upwards. That the person I was talking to obviously did not realize what I had achieved until they were faced with my promotion application. I also wish I'd recognized this person's unconscious bias within a space of probably 6 months of that happening. I saw other evidence of them really holding other female academics back. They didn't realize it themselves. And once my eyes were opened, I could see it everywhere. So I wish I'd recognized that. And I also wish I'd sought more than one opinion. I don't, for the life of me, know why I didn't think to go and ask somebody else whether they thought I would be promotable when I got the no answer to my questions initially. All right, the ugly, and I'll not talk for too much longer. I came across this point earlier that, relative to opportunity doesn't really work. We all know that some people are fortunate enough to have more opportunities than others. But I think what we need to do is just to really focus on what we are able to explain in that narrative of the role that we have had. So even if you've been unfortunate enough to work under somebody who's been gatekeeping opportunities, find a way to talk about the impact that you have had and what you have contributed, as well as identifying that and looking for other ways to make an impact that are feasible. And of course, the usual unconscious bias and discrimination, we know that they exist. They link to publications, to citations, to awards, and it's all too easy for those things to make a positive impact on things like promotion applications. On the flip side, I do think that people who sit on these promotion committees, they are people who care about people, who understand what they're reading and will read everything critically. So, somebody who just submits a whole bunch of metrics saying that they've published loads and are awesome may not get up if they're not able to demonstrate their leadership and their impact in their narrative. I think we would probably all agree that it is still more difficult to attain promotion with a teaching focused profile than a more classic research focused one. Although again, there are improvements and things are shifting. And then of course, other aspects of gender bias. So I think that my reflection there, something I talk to colleagues about and try to live myself, is not to not do those things, because I think, for some people, it's a really important aspect of the work that we do. But be smart about it, recognize that that's what you're doing, and try to find a way to provide those contributions in a way that can have a described achievable outcome at the end of the day that can be included in a promotion application. All right, I've got a couple of last slides before I'm done. I thought I would throw some unsolicited tips and advice in there. And so I'm just going to rattle through these because I think that they're fairly straightforward. One is apply for special consideration if you meet the criteria. There are people who meet the criteria and don't apply. I think some people may think that that's going to count against them. I can at least speak from the experience I have had sitting on promotion committees. That's not the case. It's simply about whatever reporting period permission has been given for, that's the amount of time that you're able to present impact across. Think creatively about weightings, because I think in academia, many aspects of what we do can fit into more than one category. So be creative, spend some time really thinking about how you're going to package up your profile into the different aspects of a promotion application case. I've talked about leadership not being linked to roles and positions, and that can be leadership of yourself, leadership of others, or of an institution. Focusing on impact and kind of real impact, not impact factors, is really important. It can be hard to do, but there are some great exemplars out there. And don't be afraid to talk about, citation metrics if you think that they're working against you in your case, and I gave an example of that. Strong encouragement to nominate yourself for awards. It's not something I've done a lot of, but I did manage to have one per promotion application, and I'm quite sure that they helped. And for the Women in Resources Award, I picked up the phone to a very senior couple of people and asked them if they would write a supporting statement in my application, and they both immediately said yes. And I think I nearly fell off my chair because I'd had to pluck up a lot of courage to make those calls. So be brave enough to do that. Something that I think we don't often see in examples, but is entirely possible, is to be very honest and transparent in an application. So, we're used to people being kind of blowing their own trumpet a lot, but you can write an application that talks about collaborations and your role in collaborative achievements. You don't have to add all the totals of the grant funding together and pretend like you're the one who brought in $5 million, when actually we all know that there are big teams involved in doing that. Feel welcome to include measures of esteem that you were invited to do, but said no to. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that doesn't occur to many people. And that you can strategically seek out such invitations if you are planning on putting a promotion application together. Couple of last thoughts here. Everybody says how you should keep records and keep track of things. I have not ever done that. It really put me off. I felt quite overwhelmed each time I sat down to write my applications. It's okay. You can search for emails. I found myself searching through photos to work out when I did field trips where. It's entirely possible. It's not best practice, but don't be put off if you're a bit like me in how your brain works there. And similarly, it's great to prepare in advance, but don't let that stop you if you haven't. Ask for feedback, always ask for feedback. Ask for people to share their applications with you. Most people are really happy to do that. It may be that they do so in confidence. And my final comment here is a big one, but I do think it's really important that we all understand that being successful and valued in our roles in academia are not the same thing as being promoted. So people sometimes may not be successful in a promotion application. It doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't, valuable and that you're not a really important member of a team. I think what we don't do so well in universities is acknowledge people's contributions outside of that promotion process as well as we could. All right, I am going to skip over that one, and this is my very last slide. For anyone not familiar with balcony time, I love this cartoon, that it's really easy to get busy dancing on the dance floor of life and having a great time. But it's only when we step up and look down from the balcony above that we can get some perspective and maybe make some more sensible decisions. I'll stop talking. Thank you.